District of Conservation is sponsored by the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, better known as CFACT. To learn more about our sponsor, head over to cfact.org. Thanks for listening to the program. Welcome to District of Conservation. I'm your host, Gabriella Hoffman. This podcast offers a sober examination into all things hunting, fishing, shooting sports, energy, environment, and the public policy surrounding it. And this podcast also specializes in original interviews that you won't hear elsewhere. Here's what I have for you today. Thrilled to have Ava Flanell back on the podcast. I wish it were on happier terms, Ava, but you have to talk about what happened in Colorado. A lot of people saw at the end of last week, your Governor Polis, signed a slew of anti-gun, pro-gun control, gun confiscatory legislation, perhaps the most extreme in the country. I want you to break this down for me, but great to have you back on the show. And you were really involved in the fight. So I know this is very personal in terms of a defeat for now. Hopefully it's not going to be permanent. But what exactly has happened in Colorado? Why should everyone outside of Colorado also be concerned?
Yeah. So first off, thanks so much for having me back. It's great to catch up with you again. So last Thursday on the 10th, Jared Polis, he signed it's SB 25003 if anyone wants to look it up. It originally started off as like a straight up gun ban. It basically said that any semi-automatic rifle, shotgun, or gas operated handgun that had a detachable magazine nobody could buy it unless the magazine was permanently fixed. And the problem with that is that doesn't exist. I only know of one manufacturer who makes an AR with a permanently attached magazine. Even the ones in California and all these other states that have quote unquote fixed mags, those can still be removed with a tool. So we were all saying like, well, this is a ban because you guys I attribute it to similar to a vehicle. You know, let's say that the governor or these legislators were saying, hey, we're not going to ban cars, but moving forward, any gas operated vehicle needs to have the gas cap epoxied. So it's like, okay, great. So you don't ban it, you just make it so that we can't use it. And so everybody was like, well, how are you supposed to make this magazine, quote unquote, permanently fixed? Some people, legislators were like, well, maybe epoxy or welding, which anybody who knows firearms, that's ridiculous. So one, I don't know how you're going to be able to load the gun. Maybe if like an AR, you could manage to possibly load if you took the gun apart. Again, this is not about ARs, but I'm using it as, like the AR is probably maybe, manageable to a degree where you could possibly load it and unload it. But even then, there's so many other guns where you couldn't even get it. You couldn't even load it. If you do manage to load it, how do you clear the gun? There's a reason why magazines have there's a reason why guns have detachable magazines, and that's so that they could properly unload the gun. So this is also incredibly unsafe. And they're all preaching that, this is a bill about safety. And clearly it is not, because it's making people have these either inoperable guns, or if they do manage to load them, they're incredibly unsafe. So then after a few amendments, they put this one amendment out where if you have a hunter safety license, then you could take a 4-hour class on top of that. Or if you don't have a license at all, you would take a 12-hour class divided into 2 different days. And it's not just like, taking a class and then getting your eligibility card. So they basically want you to go to Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They dragged them into this. And that's because they don't have the funding in order to pay for all of this. Like there's going to have to be a computer system and database and all that. And as it is, Colorado has been trying to cut its funding down. So they knew that this was going to have a fiscal note on it, which initially it said 0. And then eventually people caught on. It was like, okay, well, there is a fiscal note, but Colorado Parks and Wildlife, we're going to take it out of the funds there and then pay it back in, I think it was like 2030 or something. So, which by the way, taking out any funds, like they're basically taking out of the Parks and Recreation. But this basically, jeopardizes the Pittman-Robertson revenue.
Exactly. I was thinking that. I was like, what? This is so self-defeatist.
Yeah, so we get about 27 to 32 million a year, depending on how many guns are sold. It's 11% tax that is already taken out, and it's called the Pittman-Robertson tax, and we've had it for years. And basically, if you diverse, any funds that are not put towards wildlife, if you're using it for something other than what it's supposed to be used for, you then jeopardize losing that. And so back to the class. So you'd have to first make an appointment with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They would put you into a system. You would go get a third party background check. And keep in mind, every step is going to have money. So Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they said it's about $40. I think they're going to realize they're going to need more than $40. Background check, let's say $20. Then you're going to find a certified instructor. Instructors have to get certified in order to teach this, like they did with the new concealed carry requirements that they pushed last year. So you'll find a certified instructor. Then imagine what a 12-hour class would cost. I'm assuming, nobody's going to get it for less than $100, and I think that's pretty cheap. And then after you complete the class, then you would make an appointment with the sheriff's department, and they would have the final say whether you can get your eligibility card, which only lasts 5 years. And then you would have to go through that process all over again. So it's incredibly ridiculous.
Arduous.
Yes, exactly. And anybody who can't afford that. So I did the math. Nobody's getting out of this without paying at least $300. It's just not possible. And then on top of that, it's going to take some time to even get this eligibility card. Right now in my county, it takes 8 months for you to get your concealed carry permit. And that's just with a class and making the appointment with the sheriff's department and waiting for it to come in the mail. There's a lot more steps involved. So it's going to take a lot more time. Anyway, so yeah, Jared Polis, he just signed it last week. There's also a few other bills that are sitting on his desk, and I don't know if this works the same way throughout the United States, but I know in Colorado, if a bill is sitting on the governor's desk for more than 10 days and they don't sign it, automatically becomes law.
Yes, it does occur in many states. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because I'm so new to politics, I only started getting actively involved in the last couple of years, not because I really wanted to, but because I had to. They always say you have to be that change that you want to see, and I'm like, this is all happening, and we need to get involved. And so there's also this ammo bill, and basically it prohibits anywhere from under 21 buying ammunition minus 22 long rifle. It also makes gun stores put ammo behind either the counter or in a locked case, because for whatever reason, they think that people are stealing ammo, even though a lot of gun store owners testified and they're like, that's the least thing. We're not worried about anybody stealing ammo. Nobody steals ammo. So that got signed. And then there's the gun show bill, that did not get signed. That's on his desk. I don't know if he's going to sign it or not. And then there's the gun show bill, which prohibits anyone under 18 from walking foot into a gun store unless they have a parent, guardian, or grandparent with them.
Jeez.
And it also makes them the gun show vendors jump through a bunch of hoops. They want everybody to have an FFL. If they're selling a gun, they need an FFL, and it's ridiculous because a lot of people go to gun shows just to, they'll walk around with their gun and usually find a buyer that way. And then you would find an FFL and facilitate a background check, through that FFL. And so it's either death by 100 paper cuts, or you just come out with, the SB3 bill, and it's bam, right in your face. And it's making it basically a privilege to be a gun owner.
That seems to be the case from the very clear explanation you gave. And to anyone with a functioning brain, that sounds extremely ridiculous what they're doing. And as we all know, it's a common refrain we say, but is this really going to stop one crime? No. I've never seen any of these stringent measures stopping one criminal from abusing a gun. We tried this in Virginia. We have had some course correction. I'm worried about the future, with what could happen politically here. But in any of these states where this is enacted, it always has the opposite intended effect. You actually see the criminalization of the law abiding and no accountability for those who actually perpetrate crimes. And then, of course, to enact all these fees and make people go through hoops and jumps. Like, I think of different, I mean, of course, blatant Second Amendment violations, but even like, it's like going back to a poll tax, which is preposterous to think that they would do this. Not surprising Jared Polis has this in mind. And I mean, what you're saying about him involving the Parks and Wildlife Agency with what he did with wolf reintroduction, everything he touches turns to mush. Like he has had a destructive path. I mean, his husband has also been very influential on the hunting side. I bet you he's involved on the firearm side of things too. But to drain their resources financially and also their manpower, woman power, like someone does have to look into that. And I spoke with Mia Anstein, who used to be on the commission. I think she might still be. She's also involved in the gun battle in Colorado as well. But she was saying privately that there's a gag order on commissioners and they can't speak out against any infringes. And I bet you there would be some who want to speak out about the agency being weaponized in this manner, and also having a potential depletion of their funds. And yeah, anything that is used outside of the confines of Pittman-Robertson would be a misuse of that funding. So this is egregious to me. Like, I'm glad you spoke about this because I think it's important that people know what's happening, especially hunters, anglers, gun owners, knowing that they're misusing conservation money. This so-called conservationist governor, he's not a conservationist, also loves to infringe your Second Amendment. And he's gunning for a political future, right? He's term limited. I've heard that Michael Bennet wants to run for governor. He's not running again for U.S. Senate. So Polis might be looking for higher office. This would not set him up for a good position to be a moderate libertarian seeking higher office. Like, he's not any of those things. Yeah. And this is for sure that. So is it rooted, like, is he trying to score points with the leftist faction of his party? Or he really believes in this and he's not for liberty, of course?
I have no idea because, I mean, as we saw with the elections last year, or actually this year, last year, I'm sorry. As we saw with elections this last year, I mean, majority of the country voted Republican. And so for him to take this, I mean, I'm surprised that he even signed it. I thought for sure he was going to let it sit on his desk and let it pass. And I had heard that he had his hand in a lot of the amendments. Like, he's one of the reasons why we have the amendment where you can buy your rights back, as opposed to the guns just basically being banned. Quote unquote banned. I mean, you can still buy these inoperable guns, these paperweights, but which, by the way, if you don't take the class, that's what you get. You could still buy these guns, but somebody has to epoxy the mag into the firearm or figure out a solution. Which I don't think they still don't really know how they're going to permanently fix these magazines into this gun. But yeah, I mean, I would say the fact that he signed it, which I'm glad he did, because now it just shows,
he's on record.
Exactly. And yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what he was thinking, to be honest with you, because even if he is trying to align himself with Everytown and Bloomberg and, and the extreme left, we've already seen that if he's trying to run for presidency, like, that did not work very well for Kamala Harris.
No. Yeah. And she's from my home state. Those policies are especially repulsed and people find them repulsive nationally. Like, I always say this, like, no matter how crazy California is politically, the views, especially on guns and anti-hunting, are not received well across the wide swath of this country. Like, you are putting yourself in political exile supporting that. You will never be elected to office supporting such extreme positions, especially with more Americans owning guns. And as you're talking about detachable magazines, you're right. I don't think I've ever seen, you train more than I do, but I've been shooting, at least over a decade casually, done some trainings and courses, but I've never heard of a gun being made without a detachable magazine. And it's funny, they want to ban AR-15 models, generally speaking, and of course in Colorado, but a criminal can, restack the magazine in a handgun and enact carnage too. It doesn't matter what type of platform he uses, like, it will detach and he can refill, and he or she, because now there are even female assailants, they could just reload it, no problem. So the magazine is not the problem. Like, they're always scapegoating the components.
I know.
And not going to the psyche of the perpetrators.
Yeah. And also, one thing to note is when you look at all of the murders that have taken place in Colorado, let's say in the last 10 years, There are very few murders that have been done with a shotgun or a rifle. There's actually more murders done with hands and feet, more murders done with knives, and then of course the very top of that is handguns. It's debatable if this actually even touches handguns. It does touch gas operated handguns, but they're very vague in the bill language. And of course, if there's anything that, any confusion, it's up to the Attorney General to decipher, who is incredibly anti-gun. But this ultimately could affect all handguns. And I guess we're still not sure. We're not sure what's going to happen until we see that final bill language. But there's been so many different amendments. I think over 35 amendments just on this one bill, which should have been a huge red flag. But yeah, I mean, this isn't. So again, if this was about safety, one, why are they banning? It's mostly banning guns that aren't even used in murders. And two, if it was so important to have training, then why isn't the training free?
Those are great questions. And you would think too that, again, they want to stop would-be criminals, but ironically, they let out a lot of these people, assailants.
They love criminals.
Who I've seen this in Virginia. I've seen this in many states in the Northeast too, where they're criminalizing law-abiding gun ownership. But when it comes to the actual criminals, they get lenient sentences and early release time from jail. So make it make sense to me how gun control would stop would-be assailants, or stop repeat assailants rather. And then, to have to pay your way and then to buy back your rights. That's just so crazy, as you explained it. Not that you agree with the term, but he's saying, okay, you can buy back your rights with these amendments. But anytime you put a deterrent, like paying hundreds of dollars just to exercise your rights, like that, I think in different courts has been found to be illegal and unconstitutional, because you shouldn't have to pay to prove that you have the ability to carry. I mean, we had several Supreme Court decisions that said you have the ability to own a gun in your home and to carry one outside of the home. So why is he misinterpreting that? Like, yeah,
well, even in Illinois recently, their whole Floyd card got struck down because it had a $10 bill attached to it. Basically, people had to pay $10 for that Floyd card, and they said that was unconstitutional. And so I'm like, wow, that was $10. Imagine if people,
$300, that should easily be struck down.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going by that metric.
And people might say like, oh, well, poor people, those are the people that are committing the crimes. But that is so stupid to say, in my opinion, because we're talking about, single parents who are on like a one income budget. We're talking about young adults who are just starting off. And, the economy is like, it still hasn't gotten better because of, Biden's doing. Things are incredibly expensive. And then we're also talking about people that are on a fixed income. It doesn't mean that just because you're underprivileged that you're this bad person committing crimes.
Right.
And I don't think, and as a result, and these people typically are usually victims, and now we're making them even more so, more likely to be victims.
We've seen actually recently with that crazy Luigi Mangione, like a lot of assailants recently have been from privileged, wealthy backgrounds. So it's not just poverty-stricken people who are committing crimes of opportunity. You even see wealthy people who've just gone nuts committing crimes too. I think even more frequently than people in lower income brackets do as well. And so the fact that they're trying to make it harder for everyone, regardless of income status, difficult to own guns in Colorado, where you said that a lot of the crimes are not even perpetrated by guns much anymore. They are through other tools. Or the people who perpetrate them are being released from jail. So it does definitely seem to me, and I think any common sense person, that he is doing this to make gun ownership harder. And by doing that, he obviously evaporates any notion that he's for freedom. I've never believed that of him. Like in Congress, he may have done some things. Okay, some fiscal, whatever stuff. But as governor, he has totally become very far to the left. Like, maybe some tax cuts, but tax cuts aren't enough. Like I'm a big tax cut supporter, but that's not enough if you're infringing in other ways, like forbidding the Second Amendment, allowing a ballot initiative where now actually I think 5 of the several dozen wolves that have been introduced haven't stayed in Colorado. They've gone to Wyoming. Yeah. They've been killed because they're interfering with, livestock or hunters or things of that sort. And so just how he has operated as a governor. I remember he banned red meat he had wanted meatless Mondays. I was like, this guy is so cringe. And it didn't surprise me that he was also going to pull the trigger on this as well, Ava. I want to ask you, what do you think the implications outside of what you've talked about are? What are going to be some of the far-reaching effects? Do you think unless like the Supreme Court or some other higher level court, federal court does not put an injunction on this, or a lawsuit is not filed to put an injunction on his action, could this, have permanent lasting effects, not only in Colorado, but elsewhere, and people can lean on that and try to pass similar legislation? Or can we count fully on SCOTUS? Because SCOTUS has been kind of wobbly lately, even with a pro-Second Amendment or conservative majority. They've been very skeptical about taking these cases.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So I think that if this bill doesn't get killed, I think that this is going to be a blueprint for other states. And, they've gotten, I'll hand it to the Democrats. They've actually gotten pretty smart with how they're approaching this. The last 2 years in Colorado, we got hit with an assault weapons ban, and that did not pass. And an assault weapons ban bill, I might say. And that did not pass. And so it's like, okay, well, how can we make it seem like, hey, we're not taking away your rights. We're just trying to, increase safety and make things safer. And, the way, again, quote unquote, common sense gun laws. And so I knew for a fact, like, if this was going to pass, they are absolutely going to take this bill and now they're going to run it in other states. And I've warned people, no state is safe. Even if it's incredibly red, they still need to be active. They can't be complacent. We have to vote. There's so many gun owners that don't vote. So many Republicans just in general, whether they own a gun or they don't, that have just given up and they've stopped voting. And it makes me so mad, to be honest with you, because there's people like myself that are out there fighting, where I just gave up the last 3 months of my life fighting this bill. And a lot of times I was kind of alone. There wasn't that many people, testifying against these other bills. And I think if we spoke up and we, made our voices heard, because again, there's power in numbers, I think we could have stopped a lot more of these bills from happening. As far as SCOTUS goes, I think you're right. I think things they looked pretty promising, and now it's like, I don't know, things keep getting pushed back. So you have to wonder what is going on over there, and why are they pushing it back? Do they not have the votes? Because I don't think that they would take on a case that, I don't know. It's hard to say. But at this point, that it needs to happen. I think that the minute that SCOTUS takes up one of these cases, it's going to help a lot of states out. So hopefully with Trump in office, Pam Bondi, they just said, they just came out with that whole Second Amendment advocacy thing. I'm hoping
zero tolerance policy of Biden era.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of hoping, I'm just like fingers crossed that more comes of this. Trump so far he's been making waves, and he hasn't really, he hasn't taken much time. He's moving very quickly. And so hopefully we see something and it works in our favor. But then we also just saw something, what was it with the whole SBR with the brace, that one guy, the ATF just penalized the guy for. I saw it really quickly. It just happened like yesterday, I believe. So it's like, it's hard to say. So I don't know. But I will say, if nothing else, like we, the people, have to be active. And even if you vote, sometimes voting isn't enough. We're sitting here and it's like our rights are just being stripped, and not even when it comes to the Second Amendment. We're getting hit from all angles. And I think that it's time that, we start talking about politics more. We start putting our foot down. We start making calls, showing up to testify, all of that stuff.
You have gotten really active, and that's absolutely true. And people shouldn't wait until bad legislation is passed to get involved. If you can prevent things early on, that's the most ideal situation. And I don't know how much you lobbied, not exchange of money, but petitioned, that's a better term, petitioned lawmakers, even those who were hostile to your views. Yes, you can meet with them, and sometimes it feels like it's not productive to talk to the people who've already made up their minds. Sometimes you can. But I think if you guys had stronger in numbers representation, maybe it could have, I don't know how many outside groups were able to help you guys really sound the alarm here, or maybe people were just waiting and seeing what happens, which is an unfortunate strategy because people think Colorado is a lost cause. But there are a lot of sportsmen and women there. Big gun culture. Historically, you look at Colorado and that's the case there. Big outdoor culture. It should be pretty accepted. And the fact that, I mean, there are a lot of people, transplants from my home state, California, unfortunately, who have really muddled the politics there, and want to live in this gun-free society, not knowing that you do need it. And it's, Second Amendment, everyone has that right to do so. They really live in this fantasy that you can have a gun-free society, but that's not the case. You should have good people with guns, not bad people with guns there. But no, I hope SCOTUS does take up a challenge. Do you know of any lawsuits? Are you going to be joining in on any lawsuits against the law, or know people who will be in Colorado? Because I bet you the lawsuits are going to be coming soon.
Yeah. So unfortunately, right now, the date for this law to go into effect is August 1st of 2026. So it's a little bit difficult to bring on a lawsuit when we can't prove, the damage that it's done. But I did recently, as of a few months ago, I became the vice president of legislative engagement with Colorado State Shooting Association. And they are kind of a charter with the NRA, but CSSA, the NRA, FPC, and SAF, they just brought on a lawsuit against the excise tax here in Colorado. So they've been very active, and that's why I wanted to align myself with, a local organization that, that was doing a good job. And we do have a few plans up our sleeve to see if maybe we can do something before August 1st of 2026, because nothing like being on the edge of your seat for that long, not knowing what's going to happen. And then hopefully, if we do bring on a lawsuit, there can be like an injunction or something where this law doesn't go into effect.
That would be a good outcome with that. What are the groups that you would like my listeners to know about? Because you have your hand in many different pots. You're very involved. I love the fact that you're getting more involved in the grassroots side of things. In addition to, are you still giving gun courses and teaching as well? I
am, yeah. Okay. I did take off like about 2 or 3 months just to focus on all these gun bills, but I'm going to start again. But as far as the organization, so if you guys
please
want
list those, yes. Mm-hmm.
If you want to support somebody in Colorado that is doing a fantastic job, I would say Colorado State Shooting Association. If you'd like to donate, really easy website. It's just cssa.org/2AC. And they're also going to be working on local elections, because the problem is like we are having such a hard time killing these bills, getting them to stop, because Republicans are outnumbered. Democrats make up the majority in the House and the Senate. And so they just keep pushing these bills out. And unless we start changing elections or possibly change the governor who can veto these horrible bills, not much is going to change. So I like that they have their hands in everything, but obviously all of that is going to come at a price. Getting active is not inexpensive when you want to do a bunch of marketing and campaigns and stuff like that for elections. And then also these lawsuits. I mean, we're lucky that the NRA, Second Amendment Foundation, and Firearms Policy Coalition came in and helped with the excise tax lawsuit, and they're sharing some of that cost. But yeah, these lawsuits, they definitely drain organizations of money. So I would recommend donate to really any of those 4 organizations that I mentioned.
Outstanding. And what are the links people can connect to you personally where they can see all these updates?
So I'd say I'm pretty active on Instagram. You have to spell out my entire handle, though, because I'm super shadow banned. So it's AVA, F as in Frank, LANELL_. It's the only one with a picture. And then I've been super active on X, and it's the same thing, Ava Flanell _. And, or if you want to, I also have a podcast. If you guys want to check that out, just go to avaflanellshow.com. There's links to all of my social media handles there as well.
A great program. I've been a guest, lucky to have the opportunity to go on there as well. So we will link to all of that, of course. But Ava, this has been very illuminating to hear that this is still being done, and in this really egregious manner. You would think people like the governor of Colorado would learn that infringing on people's rights will have an opposite intended effect negatively. And you can't claim to be for freedom when you do this. So Ava, we will keep tabs on this. Hopefully once there is an update, hopefully a positive update on this ordeal, you come back on and we can discuss more. But thank you for sharing what happened on the ground. I really wish we spoke on better circumstances, but it's important to come on even when these bad bills pass. And I appreciate you coming on and leading the fight. And hopefully it leads others to and compels others to get involved too, because you need to be involved. It's very true.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll have to have you back on my show here soon as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this installment of District of Conservation, I would love to know your feedback. Send it my way. Please be sure to leave us reviews on Apple, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are played, and also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to never miss a beat nor a guest announcement. Thanks so much for listening to District of Conservation. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please share the podcast to those who may be interested in learning more about these critical natural resources, environment, energy issues.